If you ache for truth, goodness, and beauty, if you're hungry for a Christianity with substance and strength, if you long for a faith that's big and bold and biblical and all about Jesus Christ, if you're inspired by the idea of one church that has spanned 20 centuries, 24 time zones, and 2 hemispheres, enfolding every race, nation, and language, then you're considering Catholicism.
Welcome back. I am here again with Cory.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. And we are back with the second installment of our series on heaven. What we're going to do here, the last episode, if you want to go back and listen to that, was an overview glossary of terms. But now we're going to get a little more granular. And we're going to talk about a very simple question. And it can be a very theological question, is a theological question, but it's also a very personal question that all of us will face at some point. And that is quite simply, what happens when we die? And we've all been with loved ones who have, or others who've passed away. I know that I have, and I know that when I was a pastor, I was around a lot of people when they passed away, and around a lot of families when their loved one passed away, and I did a lot of funerals. And so this is really a very personal, emotional, existential question. And one of the things that struck me over the years is how most people didn't have a very clear idea of what happened. You'd sit in the room and there'd be like 8 or 10 family members or others sitting around, and they all have like completely different ideas about what happened when they departed. So what this whole series is about is to get away from all of that misunderstanding and maybe some of that pop culture misunderstanding and just get really granular. What does the Catholic Church teach? Especially for those of you who are Catholic but maybe want to know more, those of you considering Catholicism, what happens when a person dies? Okay? Why don't you begin? You've got a person. We need a person. We'll call him Bob. So Bob is really sick, and Bob is there at the hospital or the hospice, and Bob breathes his last breath. What happens?
So in the death of the body, so the body ceases to function, is no longer a biological entity that is working, the soul departs from it or is separated from it. And so we talked last time about the Latin word for soul being anima. That's where we get the word animated, and living or moving and breathing. And the anima, the animating principle, is no longer in the body. So it is dead. It is still that person's human body, and so we should treat it with respect. But it is going to decay, it's going to break down and no longer be identifiably that person's body anymore. But the soul is immortal and will continue to exist, and that person's identity will then move on, and we'll talk about what the possibilities there are.
Okay. A human person is a unity of body and soul. The soul, as you say, the soul at that point ceases to be with the body. I should tell this story. I've been around a lot of people at the moment of death as a pastor, right? And even just personally, family members and friends and others, people that I know. I've been around a lot of dying people, and I've been there in the room when a lot of people died. And I'll never forget somebody who was very close to me, and the hospice lady came in, I don't know, the morning that the person passed or something. And
after they had died?
No, before. The morning that they were going to. Like you knew that day would be the day. And I remember them trying to explain to the person lying in the bed, and I was there, do you understand what's happening? And it stuck out in my mind that the hospice lady said something to the effect of, your time on this earth is coming to an end today. Do you understand what's going to happen to you? And without getting too much into it about who this person was and this and that, they were not necessarily a person of solid faith. And they were really struggling to process that in the next couple of hours as I sat and talked to them. They really struggled to simply process the idea that their time on this earth would be over with in a few hours.
Well, that's understandable. If you have faith, it's entirely out of our experience. We've never had any experience other than being on this earth and in our body.
Yeah, I think that's right. What do you compare it to? There's a lot of things that I can say to you, hey, Cory, we're gonna do surgery on you, Cory, and I'm going to put this mask on your face and ask you to count backwards from 100, and you're going to go to sleep. Okay, you go, that's what the anesthesiologist says, right? And you go, okay, I can relate to that. It's going to be like going to sleep, right? But when someone says your time on this earth is coming to an end and you will no longer be with your body, you go, I've never not been with my body. So I don't... Mm-hmm. Oh, and by the way, this is an important point. Just to be really totally clear about souls and bodies, the soul is created at the moment of conception. So it's a heresy. It's another religion to say that there are these souls in heaven waiting to be assigned bodies. And then God gave me a body. That's a complete heresy. That's not Christianity.
Because it's a different anthropology. In that situation, it's like the soul is like the driver, and the driver gets put in a go-kart and gets to drive it around for a while. The soul is independent of the body in that case.
Plato spoke of it as a ghost in a machine. That it's your thing with a go-kart or whatever, that we're like this spirit being that just is inhabiting this shell, like we have a meat suit. And that's a complete heresy. So I think you're right. I think at the moment when someone says your time on this earth is coming to an end and you will no longer be with your body in a certain number of hours, I don't think your mind can wrap around that. You think about I always used to be terrified when I was a kid when you'd watch like movies where it was like the condemned prisoner is waiting for dawn, where he's going to be like executed at dawn, right? Mm-hmm. And you go, what's that going to be like? In a few hours, they're going to hang down your head, Tom Dooley. They're going to hang me up to die. I think just facing death is the most existential thing. I think the whole human experience on this planet, every religion, right? Thought of your own death is hard to comprehend because you have nothing to compare it to.
And there's an unnaturalness to it because it...
Bingo. Unpack that.
Right. Yeah, because the human person is not meant to be... the human soul is not meant to be separated from the body. God created a man to be body and soul. There's such an intimate connection between the two of them. It's almost difficult to find a good metaphor for the body is animated by the soul. It's like a hand in glove, but even more intimate than that somehow.
But see, this is where we get into heresies, and so many kinds of heresies, like Gnosticism and other kinds of heresies, which is the notion that this material universe, this corporeal body of mine, is merely a temporary shell. This is the whole Gnostic heresy in all of its forms. And it gets passed down in weird modern ways to things like, frankly, different kinds of ideas of transgenderism, where my body is not really me. There's a me, I have an identity, and then I'm just trapped in the wrong body. Or transhumanism, that they're going to upload my consciousness to a computer or something, right? But this whole idea that I am something separate from my body, and it is the gateway to all kinds of heresies. And so that's why the Catholic Church is very particular about this, and that's just where the abortion thing comes in. Because the soul is created at the moment of conception. The body and soul are created together. And I liked what you said, is it's unnatural. It's creepy. Our natural state is not to be disembodied souls in heaven. And I think this is why heaven is a weird thing to wrap your mind around. Because you go, okay, so, I'm out there and I'm floating on a cloud and the saints are there and the angels are there or whatever's going on. And it all feels weird and unnatural because it is unnatural. That's not what God made us to be. When God made Adam and Eve, I'm on a rant here, but bear with my rant, right?
Yeah.
So I know you've heard me say this many times, not just on the podcast, but way back in the days when we were at the student college ministry. I used to like to say all the time that we have a notion that God made Adam and then formed a body for Adam. But that's not what Genesis 2 says. It says that God scooped up the dust of the earth and formed Adam and then breathed life into him. And it's not that we are souls that have been given bodies or souls that are inhabiting bodies. If anything, we are the dust of the earth that has life breathed into it. And that's what, if anything, that's what we are. We are the dust of the earth that has got life breathed into it. And so the notion, when God made Adam and Eve, he made them to be material beings, right? Body and soul living in a material universe. And that's why heaven, the intermediate state, is kind of creepy. I think in a sense, it's I know I'm dominating here, I shut up, but let you talk, but it's a condescension. Help me out. What's the right word? It is an accommodation. It is an accommodation to the reality of the fall. It was not supposed to be this way. Adam and Eve, if they had not fallen, there would not be disembodied souls in heaven. They would have continued to live in Eden. And when we get to the new heaven and the earth at some point, we'll talk about that, because I think that, anyway, I'm going to stop talking. You go. I'm going to lean back.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to add that I think this is the reason that the idea of ghosts or even just corpses are essentially uncanny or spooky to us, because that's not the way it's supposed to be, and something is wrong there if the soul and the body are separated. And I think it's also why we have so many adequate pop culture depictions of heaven, or even, Christian artistic depictions of heaven that are quite good and that are trying to grasp at something, but that are ultimately inadequate or fall short, because we don't have a way of imagining something that's immaterial. Imaginations are essentially united to our status as bodily things. I mean, like the worst cliche about heaven of sitting on a cloud and a harp, those are physical things. Like we have to imagine it that way, because we don't have a frame of reference that doesn't involve the body and physical things, because it's part of who we are, a constituent part of who we are.
I like your thought there about ghosts. It's why graveyards are spooky. This explains, I think, not even just in our pop culture, but going back throughout human history, why death and graveyards and ceremonies for the dead, however, whether they're buried or they're burned or whatever, right? Tombs. There's something that is so mysterious and supernatural and creepy and weird in the human imagination, in every culture, right? In every human culture about the dead and dead bodies, because they're unnatural and they creep us out, because built into us, just like we have like a natural, like phobias or reactions, right? Like you're afraid of snakes or loud noises or falling or whatever.
Yeah. Things that we know are dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah. There's something that's inherently built into us. That dead body that doesn't have a soul in it is unnatural. That's why dead bodies creep us out. Conversely, why a ghost creeps us out, because that shouldn't happen. It shouldn't be there. And it makes the hair at the back of our neck spring up, because it's an unnatural thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So at that moment, our soul separates from our body. And then what? Okay. Let's clarify it. And we made this point last time. What do we not become, Cory?
We do not become an angel. That's a common misconception. I think people are either they're receiving sloppy pop cultural representations of heaven, or they're just stretching by analogy, becoming a disembodied thing. An angel is a disembodied thing. Oh, you must become an angel. But you don't. An angel is a different kind of creature that never had a body, never is going to. You don't become an angel. You are. Yeah,
I like to watch It's a Wonderful Life and Clarence the Angel and all this kind of stuff. Oh, yeah. It's the wrong idea. But it's remarkable how many people say, my loved one died and now they're an angel in heaven, or that angels used to be human beings. So that's not what we are. And we'll get, I think, more into that maybe in a future episode. But we become a disembodied human soul and not an angel. And at that moment, do we go straight to heaven? What happens at that moment? But we don't go all the way there, right? Theoretically, in pop culture, you go to St. Peter's Gate or something, and you find out if you get in. Because at the moment you die, it isn't like you go to heaven and then await your hearing. At the moment you die, your you need to you need to get routed to where you're going. And that's something called the particular judgment. You want to talk about that?
Yes. So this is, as you say, the routing or the decision on God's part about where you're going. And I think we'll probably talk more in depth in a future episode about the criteria of that judgment, or why some people go to heaven, some people go to hell, some people go to purgatory. Yeah. So in the Christian spiritual tradition, it's often envisioned as you're an angel, maybe your guardian angel, taking your soul or accompanying your soul to the judgment. People have often talked about Mary and the saints being an aid to the soul in that time. But it's essentially what it is that you come before God and God judges you, and you are either determined to be in friendship with God, in which case you are either going to heaven, or you're going to purgatory, going to heaven by way of purgatory, which we can elucidate more, or you are not in friendship with God and you are going to hell.
Okay, so let's be clear about some terms. This is called the particular judgment or the personal judgment, right? You want to talk about that? Why is it called that?
Yeah, so that's to distinguish it from the general judgment that comes at the second coming of Christ, or the end of this age and the beginning of to come. And so person, when they die, is judged individually. And so God, in the intimacy of that moment, judges them, and they go where they need to go. But then at the end, when the dead are raised and Christ returns in majesty, as we say in the Creed, to judge the living and the dead, the judgment is public. It is before everyone. Everyone and everything is judged in one complete and total act of judgment. And that is the inauguration of the new heaven and the new earth, when all things are put to rights and all wrongs and evils are eliminated. So it's all there in the terms. Particular means it's particular to that individual.
And particular or personal. And you introduced a distinction there that's important, and that is between private and public. So the particular and personal judgment is private. It's between you and God. The final judgment is public. All the books are opened. All the secrets are revealed. We see the curtain is pulled back on the universe and the cosmic drama, and all is revealed. But in this personal moment, and again, to your point, art tries to imagine this. Do you float up to something and God's sitting behind a desk or on a throne or whatever? Or is it just at that moment of death when your soul separates from your body, there's sort of an encounter? What's that like? Who knows what that is like? But the important thing is God at that point, I hate to use this word, routes you into one of three destinations. Now, we'll get, again, more into the criteria, but for those who are wondering real quickly right now, when you face death as a Catholic, okay, now I'm looking for the particular Catholic teaching, what is the criteria for a good death, to be prepared for death?
You will want to be absolved of your sins. So a Catholic will want to avail him or herself of confession and the anointing of the sick, and to receive the Eucharist, which is in that case called viaticum, which is Latin for the bread of the way, or of the journey, that we receive Christ in that final moment as the bread that sees us through on that journey to heaven. And so Christ provides his grace to us through those sacraments. It doesn't mean that if by some circumstance you can't receive the sacraments that you're out, but that's how Christ through the church provides us with the strength and grace to make that transition.
Yeah, if you're at the beach and the tsunami comes and sweeps you away and you didn't get a chance to get to confession or call a priest, then obviously God takes into account your circumstances. But I think the Catechism uses a term about dying in friendship with God and not in a state of mortal sin. Real quick, without getting too deep on this, what is that distinction?
Yeah, so mortal sin is sin that breaks our friendship with God, that severs our relationship with him. So this would be a sin that is what's called a grave matter. So that means it's a serious thing. It's not a little deal, and something that you knew was a big deal and that you did deliberately with knowledge. And so if we have mortal sin on our conscience, then we are not in friendship with God. we come back into friendship with God through confession, through the sacrament of reconciliation, by repenting of our sin and being forgiven and absolved.
It's often spoken of as dying in a state of grace, right?
Yeah.
And again, you don't know when you're going to get T-boned by the cement truck driving to church. So the thing is, that's why frequent confession, frequent attendance at Mass and taking of the Eucharist, frequently availing yourself of the resources of the church to be in friendship with God, right?
Yeah, because it's essentially a relational thing. It's not a mechanistic thing. It's not just if I went to confession that I'm in, and if I was on my way there, but I got hit by the cement truck, as you say, then oops, you didn't get there, so tough luck, buddy. God obviously knows your heart and knows your circumstances, and it's about friendship or lack thereof with him. The sacraments are the means of grace that he's given us to maintain that friendship. There's the relationship maintenance tools.
So if you're listening out there, none of us knows the day and the hour or the time or the place or whatever, but we should maintain our friendship with God through the sacraments and availing ourselves from them, of them, so that we can be prepared at any time to face that particular judgment. So at the moment that our body is separated, our soul is separated from our body in some way, shape, or form that we can't imagine, we have this encounter with God, the Holy Spirit, whatever that looks like, and we are judged, and we are sent to one of three intermediate destinations. And I want to stress that they're intermediate destinations. Cory, why are they called intermediate destinations? And then tell us what the three are.
Yeah, they're intermediate because they're not permanent. They're temporary. You're on your way through them, in a sense. Now, I would put them in two different categories, that they're intermediate in different ways. So the first is truly or completely intermediate, and that's purgatory. And so we just talked about mortal sin, which severs your relationship with God. But there's also venial sin, which harms your relationship with God, which damages it, but doesn't cut it off entirely. And so if we die with unresolved venial sin, which is probably very common, then we need cleaning up or cleansing or purification in order to go to heaven, simply just because of what heaven is. It's the perfect communion with God. And if there's sin in us, then we're not capable of that. We have to be made capable of it, or the scriptural image is to have the clean wedding garment, white wedding garment, to get ready to go to the wedding banquet that is heaven. And so purgatory is truly intermediate. It's designed for those who die in friendship with God but need to be purified. So if you go there, you're on your way to heaven. Nobody stays in purgatory. If you go to purgatory, there's no doubt of your final destination. You're headed to heaven. And then heaven and hell are intermediate in a different sense. They're intermediate in the sense that you're going to go there in your as a disembodied soul until the resurrection, in which case you will be reunited with your body, and then you will be, in a sense, still in heaven and hell, but in an embodied way. So if you go to heaven now and then you're resurrected, you're going to be in eternal friendship with God in the resurrection. If you go to hell and then you're resurrected, you're going to be eternally out of friendship with God in the new heaven and the new earth. It isn't like the resurrection comes and you might swap teams or go in a different direction. But they're intermediate in the sense that you're not always going to be separated from your body. You're going to be in heaven or hell for a time, however long it is, however you experience time without a body, until Christ returns and raises the dead.
Yeah, that's right. Obviously, it's right. You're right. Obviously, you're right. I'm agreeing.
It's not always obvious.
No, it is. You're always right. Cory never makes a mistake. What I'm just saying is, yeah, in the sense of, yeah, absolutely. I think a way to think of it is that while the state of your relationship with God is determined at the moment of death, at that particular judgment, in terms of heaven and hell, right? Or purgatory, which is like doing the fourth grade over again. It's a terrible analogy, but maybe not the worst analogy ever. It's remedial.
I can think of worse.
It's like remedial. right? You tried to pass the bar exam or something, and you failed, and now you're taking it for the 17th time, and you have to keep taking it till you get it right or something like that. But the point is that if you die in friendship with God, like you say, that relationship with God is there, but the experience is a disembodied experience of it. So you're in heaven, whereas you will have the full joys of heaven after Christ returns, the final judgment, the resurrection, the new heaven, the new earth, in which case you will have the absolute and total enjoyment of God in your fully human state in that new material universe. The chilling reality is that some are resurrected and their bodies are joined with them for eternal separation from God. And when we get into the episode where we get really granular about heaven and hell, we'll get into that. But that's it. When you die, your body is going to be separated. Your soul is going to be separated from your body. You're going to face a particular judgment, and you're going to be routed to one of these three destinations, which is, in a sense, a transitionary destination to awaiting the completion of his return and making these things, in a sense, complete. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you said, you don't get to change teams. There's not mulligans or do-overs on this deal, which is why you need to take it very seriously, because there's no way out. When we talk about these more completely, in Dante, at the very beginning, the few people know very much about Dante, but everybody remembers the sign, or at least one of the lines on the sign over the cave leading down to hell, the Inferno, right? Which is, abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Because once you go in here, there's no coming out. So what that means is you need to be prepared for that moment of death.
We talked about it as death being the gateway to eternity, and that is accurate. But the journey starts here and now every day. Like, you're either on your way to heaven or you're on your way to hell at any particular time now. And that's highlighted by the fact that we don't know when we're going to die. But if we did.
Right. No, that's an excellent point. Your trajectory. Every day you're making your trajectory. Every day you're moving a little bit closer one way or the other. And two last things I want to clear up here before we call this episode a wrap. The first one is to dispense with some nonsense. This was a number of years ago. My wife and I, there was a couple that we met, another couple, and they were very nice, and we got to know them a little bit, and they invited us to go to dinner, and then we had dinner with them again, and I don't know, we ended up having dinner with them 3 or 4 times or something. And I don't know, it was probably the second or third or fourth time that we were out with these folks. They were cradle Catholics, and this was like right around the time when we were in the process of converting into the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. And so they were very gracious, and they're like, oh, you guys are coming to the church, and let's go to dinner, and we'll get to know you. And I was like, oh, okay. We'll get to know some Catholic people. And so we're like in the second or third dinner, we're at this restaurant, and the wife, and the whole conversation was how totally Catholic they were. Like, we grew up in this Catholic church, and we went to school with the nuns, and the nuns hit us with rulers and yada, and I was an altar boy.
Sure.
And they always do this whole resume of how
they're going through their bona fides.
Yeah,
yes.
How Catholic they were. And then we're like, the wife is like 2 or 3 drinks in at dinner and starts going on about reincarnation and how she's trying to understand her past lives and what lives she's going to have. And I was sitting there, and my wife is a gracious woman and so wise, so much wiser than I was, because she's like kicking my ankle into the table. Because I'm like, you know me, Cory, I'm like, oh,
you're going in. Yes.
I'm going in, man. So I'm going in.
Yeah, I would have a hard time leaving that one alone too.
And I'm like, I'm going in, and I'm going to tell her how, and she's, no, the Catholic Church is good with that. And I'm like, and my wife's like grabbing her at the table, and she's like, oh, hey, look over there. Like, it's a monkey.
Like a distraction.
And she's pulling the fire alarm, waving for the check. And okay, so let's just clarify this nonsense of this lady who was telling me how it's totally cool to be a Catholic and believe in reincarnation. Is it, Cory? Answer the question.
No. In a word, no. Yeah, so reincarnation is definitely not a Christian idea. You find it as an idea in some of the ancient Greek philosophies, and then prominently in like Buddhism and Hinduism, some East Asian religious traditions. But it's really out of context. It doesn't make sense with the Christian understanding of death and judgment. So I think it's in one of Paul's letters where he says it is appointed for man once to die and then the judgment. That's really the Christian framework, is that we live one life, we die, we're judged. Everything we just talked about, we go one place or the other. And part of it is that Christian anthropology that we keep hitting too, because reincarnation, sometimes it's imagined as being reborn as a new human being, but it's often like you're going to go become an anteater or a slug or a bit of algae or something. It breaks that idea of Christian anthropology that there's some essential unity between the human soul and body. It imagines the soul as some kind of, interchangeable part that you can pop into different physical organisms, and that doesn't fit with our understanding of human beings at all.
Okay, so Cory, no reincarnation, right? All right. Second thing, and then let's end on this, because a writer that has meant so much to both of us is C.S. Lewis, who's not a Catholic, but a Christian genius, and probably one of the most effective communicators of Christianity or Christian truth in the 20th century, at least.
Oh, yeah.
And thoroughly orthodox in most of what he wrote about. And he has this great line in his book, The Weight of Glory. And so I know you know this passage. So I'm gonna read the passage, and then I'm gonna let you comment on it, and that's gonna be the end of the episode. I'll give you the last word, okay? So here's that last, I think it's the last paragraph of the book or something.
Yeah, I think so.
So this is Lewis in The Weight of Glory. It is a serious thing to live in a society of possible gods and goddesses, to remember that the dullest and most uninteresting person that you talk to may one day be a creature which, if you saw it now, you would be strongly tempted to worship, or else a horror and a corruption such as now you meet, if at all, only in a nightmare. All day long we are, in some degree, helping each other to one or other of these destinations. It is in the light of these overwhelming possibilities, it is with the awe and the circumspection proper to them, that we should conduct all our dealings with one another, all friendships, all loves, all play, all politics. There are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal.
Yeah, mic drop. What even to say about that? Yeah, it goes to what we've said about what a human being is, that a human being is meant for friendship with God and is intended for that eternal glory that Lewis is talking about, and that we need to take that seriously for ourselves and for our family and our friends and for strangers and for people we don't like very much, that God loves them, and by his grace, God willing, they will be one day filled with his grace and these amazing creatures in heaven. And that's part of why we treat others with charity as Christians, because not only are we made in the image of God, hopefully we're on our way to being remade even more closely conformed to his image and likeness.
Okay. Well, there it is. We'll be back with the next episode in the series very soon. Thanks for listening. We'll be back with another episode soon. But before you go, can I quickly ask you to do 5 things? First, please rate the podcast on whatever platform you listen on. That really moves it up in search rankings. Second, please write a review on either Apple Podcasts or on our website, consideringcatholicism.com. That encourages others who are searching for a Catholic podcast to try this one out. Third, please share it with others. Send them a link or post an episode on your social media. Fourth, please write me at consideringcatholicism.com or leave a comment on our website. I'd love to hear your comments, your questions, and your stories. And finally, this podcast is 100% donor supported.
My donors keep me going, they help cover my costs, and they let me dedicate more time to researching, writing, recording, and editing to get the episodes out to you faster. So please consider giving a one-time or recurring donation through the links in the show notes or on the website so that this ministry can continue and grow. And never forget, Christus vincit, Christus regnat, and Christus imperat.